It's the Kink Consultant Podcast, where we're turning up the heat on all things kink and dating, relationships, and pop culture. So close the door, plug in your headphones, and let's get down to it. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of The Kink Consultant. I am joined by amazing and very sexy content creator, Beau Delacroix, who I first discovered on Instagram and then through a rabbit hole of amazing OnlyFans content, thought this is someone I need to have on the podcast. So welcome, Beau.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to understand, who are you, Beau? I mean, on Instagram, you present as a dom. Are you a dom?
Yes. Yeah, I've been in the lifestyle for quite some time. And this is actually just recently is the first time I've included that dom content in what I post on Instagram and OnlyFans. Before that, I was just following the conventional wisdom to keep kink out of it because you don't want to alienate people. Yeah, so that's definitely a big part of my life outside of the content creation well before that.
That's awesome. When you started making content, were you sort of disappointed? You were thinking like, oh, I'd love to include kink, but it's just probably not going to make money? Or were you happy to keep them separate?
I didn't mind keeping them separate. I just didn't see maybe the market for it. My background was in photography and videography. So I think that I didn't realize how valued kink would be in this space. I thought that that's where the value would come from, was producing high quality content when a lot of it is filmed on iPhones or smartphones. I didn't realize how valuable it would be in this space, which is kind of naive, but...
No, not naive at all. I think that everyone would assume high quality content. How did you first get involved in kink? Were you like from a very young age or were you introduced to it?
I wasn't really introduced to it. I sort of had to dig it up myself. So I'm from a very small town way up north in Canada, and there isn't any small town, I think, in North America is going to be conservative, and especially if it's fairly isolated. There wasn't really much of a kink community. There was some people who were interested in it, but there was no sense of community online or otherwise. If you search FetLife in Prince George, there's about 7 results, and nobody shows their face because they don't want to be recognized, right? Yeah, so the community aspect was really missing. So I was just learning what I could from online sources. And for the first, I'm 33 now, from probably the age of about 22 to 27, I was the kinkiest person I knew. I was always the kinkiest person in the room. So you learn and you grow and you enjoy things a lot slower, I think, when you don't have other people to experiment with and to learn from.
How were you learning then? Like, what was your journey of learning? Just online?
Yeah, it was mostly online resources. Podcasts like this one, although 10 years ago they were a lot less prevalent, right?
Absolutely.
It wasn't something that I could really include in my daily life like I do now, because it was a lot more taboo up there, right? So not only was I the kinkiest person I knew, whole areas of my life where I just wouldn't mention it. I was younger, I was new in my career, I, didn't want to jeopardize that, so you're a lot more careful. So I would say I kind of minimized it in my life, unfortunately. So I didn't get all the enjoyment out of it that I do now.
I know, because you're kind of hiding a part of yourself, so you can't fully lean into it in the same way. But keeping that side of yourself hidden or secret or whatever it is kind of important when you do have a career, I think. Especially, were you still living in the small town or did you move out mid-20s?
I left the small town in my late 20s. I think I was 28 when I left there. I'm public about my location, so I can tell you I'm in Vancouver. I moved down here about 5 years ago. Yeah, and so I think maybe we'd be in different situations there, though, because for men, it doesn't really jeopardize your career in the same way, right? The stigma does not really land the same way in a public setting versus, a woman being open about it in her career. And I also work in construction. The standards are a lot lower there, I think, for, how you have to be politically correct at work.
I agree with that. Do you think, though, that is just because you're dominant? Like, if you were submissive, there might be different connotations, especially working in construction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think my experience is probably the most free from discrimination and stigma that I can imagine because, like I said, the industry I'm in, my gender, my body, I'm a big guy, I'm about 6'5". I think I'm treated much differently because of that, especially in construction. And you're right. If I came out and said, I'm submissive and I'm, really enjoying exploring pegging, that would be received much differently because homophobia is rampant in construction.
That is the reputation it has. It might not even be a woman-man thing. It's a dominant-submissive thing, I think, because finding out a woman, no matter her career, is dominant, I think there's a power move in that that's going to be more socially acceptable because, in a way, it's really bucking the trend of women being submissive. It's the anti-patriarchy move to be a dom. And I think even when I told people I was a pro-dom, there was like a respect to it of like, wow, you're a badass. But I was also a pro sub. If I start by telling someone I was a pro sub, it's very much like, so you were giving sexual favors? And it's like, no, I wasn't doing that in either of those roles. But the approach, the thing people say first, it always falls into those two categories. So I always like think about that when it's like, who is accepted and who's not? And I think it's sometimes more of a power thing than a man-woman thing, from my experience.
If there are any pro-doms in construction who are open about it listening, I mean, I'd love to hear what that experience is like.
But I also related when you mentioned the small town. I grew up in a small town in Ireland. I was so young when I knew what I was into, but I wouldn't even bring up kink because I was so young. My learning experience was like if I was reading a romance novel, and I would read every romance novel I could get to hope that there was one scene in it that might turn me on or might be something somewhat kinky. So I'd be like trying to go to secondhand stores to buy the 1980s prints of books to get that stuff. And when I see your Instagram posts, it kind of reminds me of those old time romance novels, except for the here and now. I'd love to know, how do you get your inspiration of what you're making?
Well, I've actually had an interesting journey of the content that I'm creating. I think I always refer to myself as a strange man. I've been involved in a lot of creative pursuits throughout my life. They're usually never quite mainstream. So I think I started initially making adult content. Well, I started having sex on the internet in about 2019 because a partner wanted to explore exhibitionism because they hadn't really had a chance to explore kink. They'd been with the same partner for 8 years at that time, which at the age of 27 is most of your adult life. So they wanted to explore exhibitionism. So before it was even in fashion to have an OnlyFans, we had a Snapchat with thousands of people watching us just for fun.
Wait, you did this on Snapchat? Wow, okay.
Way back when. I don't think it's as easy to do on Snapchat anymore.
Okay.
No, you can't put it on the public stories by any means. You can't be on the Discover page. But
still, I mean, we're so used to platforms being so strict now that it's kind of hard to imagine.
I was actually recently banned permanently from Snapchat, so I can tell you when it comes to promoting the sale of adult content, they are very strict. But if you're just creating it and putting it out there, of course, they're fine with that because I think that's a big part of what their platform's used for.
Learning something new every day. This is the first time I'm hearing this.
I actually didn't know that either until I was banned for it.
Did you talk to a lawyer or anything to see if you could get back on, or you really did breach their terms of service?
I violated the hell out of their terms of service. Before they noticed, I was violating them daily. So that one's understandable.
Okay. I want to ask you, like, what was that conversation like when your partner at the time brought this to you? Were they awkward about it, or was it an, I want to try it, and you both decided together? What was the journey of knowing that they were sort of interested in this to actually going to Snapchat?
I remember it being fairly smooth, actually. I've always been pretty open about these things. Like, I don't really carry a lot of shame about it. I never have. And so I think people find that it's easy to bring these things up when they're in relationship with me, because even if it's not something they're interested in, I'm still talking about it. I'm talking about my past, my history. So the conversation feels fairly open already. And it actually came up because she had a friend who used to always joke. They had a friend group that was all couples. And this one friend used to joke that, if anybody wanted to let her watch them have sex, she was interested. And I mentioned that one time. I said, that's funny that Michelle makes that joke. And my partner said, well, she's not joking. Like, she's made it very clear other times. She's not really joking. Like, she would be interested.
She wants to watch this Michelle person.
She wants to watch. And so my partner said, they were interested in exploring some kind of kink, and that one kind of appealed to them, but not Michelle, obviously. Yeah, so we actually made some dating app accounts to, find people who were interested in watching. Down here in Vancouver, we changed our location because we didn't want to obviously use the small town that we were in.
Yeah, I can see exactly why.
So we changed the location to down here, and people are, very interested, especially when it's free. They're extremely interested. And that was kind of the first taste I got of that sense of community around sharing sexuality, because there's thousands of people, but we had a range of experiences with those people. When we would post something on our story, and they would comment and write us messages back saying, that's fascinating. I've never thought of that. Or can you guys try this and let me know how it is? Or they would ask us questions about, how we figured out we liked that. And there was one man in particular that is really memorable. He asked if he could send us pictures of him wearing panties. We were curious and fine with it. So we said, sure, go ahead. And afterwards he sent us this video where he was like breaking down in tears because he'd never been able to show anyone that. And it was the only opportunity he'd had in this like anonymous community, where in the grand scheme of things, he was still fairly isolated because he was only seeing us. He didn't even have other people in the community to speak to. But that little tiny bit of community was really, really meaningful for him. And I think that's so important when it comes to this stuff, which is a big part of the reason that I am very open about my location. I'm very open about, like, if you see me in public, you can come speak to me, you can say hi, because community is incredibly important. And I'd like to be a part of the community any way I can.
That story is powerful. I've talked about this on multiple podcasts that I've even gone on. Men wearing women's lingerie is so common. right? And it's so shamed. And I end up having a lot of wives and girlfriends contact me because they find their partner wearing panties. And I jokingly say, like, I talk them off the ledge, but I do. And I'm like, if you only understood how common it was. So I feel for people, it's so hidden. And when you think about it, why do undergarments even need to be gendered? This is a point a lot of people make to me. I'm like, and then we just shame people for it, or, don't allow people to be themselves. I'm so glad you were able to give him that opportunity. And hopefully it sent him on a way of being slightly more open or accepting, because you guys saw him.
I mean, that was 6 years ago, so I don't know where he is now, but hopefully he's a little further down that path.
Oh my gosh, 6 years ago was such a different time. Like COVID, you can't say whether, I mean, obviously it was bad, but like, I think the surge of OnlyFans, the surge of content creators, I think it just normalized some of this a lot of, now it's not like, oh, they're porn stars or whatever. It's like, oh, they're on OnlyFans. It's a whole new world where hopefully people are more accepted.
Definitely. And even if we get more acceptance, that's amazing. But I think the bigger picture is it's put a lot of the power back in the hands of the content creators, right?
Absolutely.
Because the porn industry was notorious for taking advantage of women. And now these women have so much more control over the content they create, who they sell it to, what they tolerate in the process of doing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Las Vegas, the AVN Awards happen. A lot of porn stars come into town and adult entertainment stars. And I often get talking to the ones who are maybe 40 or 50. They'd been in the industry a long time ago. And just hearing the stories of how they would make maybe 1 hour of content, they would get paid for one day. But the content they made in that day was chopped and sold in ways that like companies were making 1,000x what they were making. And it is good that it was taken back, because the stories are so sad. It's just they had no power and there was just no opportunity to take charge. And now they're sort of trying to figure out their world on OnlyFans of taking it back, but obviously in a different age bracket, offering different things and really trying to differentiate themselves in a world where now so many more people are doing it. So it was like there were two sides to it. It was easy to become famous, or easier to become really famous, but also a lot of being taken advantage of. I always think it's interesting because that's the other side of it. There's a lot of competition that possibly didn't exist 20 years ago if you were willing to do this work. I don't know.
Very true. Yeah. The circumstances were so much different that you had to tolerate, you had to be okay with so much more nonsense that it really cut down on the amount of people who were willing to get involved, because there was no getting involved just a little bit. It was you're a porn star or you're not, right?
That's exactly it. And that was all people really thought. It's like you're doing sex work or you're not doing sex work, but it's slightly more nuanced now. People understand like, oh, it's not just having sex. There are so many sides to it, especially when we talk about kink.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so how did you make the jump from Snapchat? Did it go Snapchat to OnlyFans, Snapchat, Instagram, OnlyFans? Like, what was your pipeline?
The pipeline was, things ended with that partner, and that's when I moved down to Vancouver in the fall of 2020, when COVID was kind of at its height. I came down here, and I was staying with a friend, and I ended up dating that friend later. But yeah, we decided that we would do the same thing. We would start on Snapchat and then eventually move over to OnlyFans. We had a lot of plans of the things we wanted to do, and we started out with the idea of storytelling. I've been writing stories for a long time, and so we wanted to take these stories and use ourselves as the actors to act them out and give them kind of a visual component, which was fun. It was a lot of work. Unfortunately, they were not the right person to do it with, and so that didn't work out. But once I found myself single and thinking, okay, I still want to do adult content. I still really enjoyed so many things about that. How can I do this myself? How can I do this solo? Because we all know the statistics tell you that couples make so much more, and the entry into it is so much easier if you're a couple, right?
Absolutely.
Because you have universal appeal. But I was thinking, how can I do this myself? And I think I mentioned earlier, I always present myself as a strange man because I just am. It's the way I grew up. My upbringing was sort of non-traditional. So I tend to have a lot of non-traditional ideas. And I took some time off that summer. I think it was the summer of 2021. I don't know if it was a little too hot and I wasn't thinking straight, but eventually I got it in my head that I should take the stories, do the same thing, but I didn't have a partner to act them out with. So I decided that what I should do is get doll's clothes and make tiny costumes for my penis. And then I would act out these stories. I would write the stories and then narrate them over like a solo male masturbation video. But as the main character, which I've dressed my penis as, is being seduced throughout the story, I'm sort of seducing my own penis and like removing its tiny little clothes, which, saying it out loud now, sounds insane.
No, I think it sounds genius. This face is like, that's fucking genius.
It was fun. I'll tell you that. It was really, really fun. I had a great time doing it. Whenever people hear about it, they're excited just like you are. They think it's fun and creative. I can tell you that the commercial appeal is not there, unfortunately. It's a very niche audience that is interested in that. It doesn't have like a lot of...
Can I ask, you say it's a very niche audience. Would you even be able to categorize them? Like men between 40 and 45. Like, were you even able to categorize who was interested in it?
That's a great question. The demographic, I could not tell you. It was all over the place.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what I love about kink, too. You choose one kink or one fetish, and the group of people you're going to get together who enjoy that same thing, very all over the place. The demographic is quite diverse.
Definitely. I think it's so separated from culture that it doesn't really fall in line with any cultural demographics.
Yeah, that's one of the things that probably makes it so exciting and a fun community to be part of. Like, I speak all the time about the Spanko community and just the number of friends of different backgrounds all over the world that I've met and connected with. Like, my community grew globally because of it. And I imagine that is also what makes it difficult to market some of this stuff sometimes. Like you said, the appeal wasn't there, but I've never even thought about it. Like, I think the more you talk about it, are those videos still available for people to go watch?
You know, I don't think they are. I think I've taken them down. I've repurposed the stories. I repackaged them into books and audiobooks. So I think I wanted to centralize them there. I still have the videos. They still exist. I think I'm going to pepper them into my content just as little Easter eggs later on. But no, there's no library to go look at, unfortunately.
I love that. I love that you thought that way. So you call yourself a strange man. I've co-opted the word weird because I used to hear that all the time. I was called weird all the time growing up. When you said you had a non-traditional upbringing, were you a kid who always marched to the beat of their own drum?
We were a family that marched to the beat of their own drum. So it was sort of compulsory to do that as a member of the family. My mother was, as I know now, very mentally ill. She was, always sort of on a new fad. She was always moving from thing to thing, and she was very intense about it. But one thing that she really believed in and was consistent about through our childhood was our education. So she homeschooled us. And so I wasn't really exposed to like mainstream culture in any significant way. My community was a lot smaller. I wasn't going to a school with hundreds of children. I wasn't learning the same things as everyone else. I wasn't really connected to pop culture. We didn't have a television. We barely had a computer. So you just kind of end up coming out a little different than everyone who goes through the mainstream channels.
All the way through high school? Like you homeschooled all the way?
Yeah, no, I've never been to a public school. You realize at some point that you're different, but I never really got the message that there was a problem with that. We weren't learning what was in school at home. We were learning something entirely different. So there was a lot of focus on like individuality and self-determinism and ethics and morality and creativity and things like that. So we knew we were different and we were fine with it. Looking back, there were some times when I questioned why she would read those books to a child, but I think it turned out okay.
Yeah, no, I think you turned out just fine. But also then if I brought a stranger in from outer space and told him about my Irish Catholic upbringing and the stuff I was told and how like I prayed to a statue of a man nailed to a cross, that would seem different too. So
yeah, very true.
Contextual. Okay. Kink and weirdness is something that goes hand in hand with me again because of the shame and the spanking and the like how I've carried it through such a young age. If someone says that, I'm like, how were you viewed? What it speaks to me is how comfortable someone is branching out into their own kinks and going out into the community. Is if they're desensitized to feeling different, often it's easier for them to step into community. That has been my experience talking to people.
Yeah, very true. You're probably not thinking about that decision of giving up something as big as you might be if you had always felt like you belonged in that community and sameness was very important to you.
Yeah, and that's basically what you're describing, like everyone marching to the beat of their own drum. Does your family know what you do?
Yeah, I don't have much of a relationship with my mother at this point, but I certainly don't hide it. My siblings all know exactly what I do. They're very supportive. They're very strange individuals themselves. I made the choice to stop censoring myself a long time ago. So I have a lot of great friends that I grew up with who are still devout Catholics. I don't censor myself. They all know exactly what I do. They all hear whatever's going on in my life, not the version that I think they would like, because I think socially, I've always been in a position to do that. You can do that anytime. But it really clicked for me when I was able to stop censoring myself at work and in like public spaces because I wasn't, a 22-year-old just figuring out their career anymore. I was like well established. I wasn't trying to fit into a space. I was, dictating the tone of that space. And so there's really no reason to keep those things to myself anymore.
So much of what I do is just hearing people, like the story you described about the man who wore panties. My calls are about the man who wants to tell their wife they want to wear panties, you know? And it's just sort of listening, being there and helping them get ready. But it's nice to, like, that's why I love the podcast. I'm always getting to speak to people who are out and proud about what they're doing. That's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Okay.
It must be nice to have that duality where you're helping people get out of it and then you get to talk to people who are thriving.
It is the best feeling in the world because I get to talk to people who are thriving. And I'm like, no, I promise it is worth the hard work you're putting in now. And it's easier if I believe it because there are people who are really struggling out there. When you were dating or looking for a partner, how important was it to you that they were kinky or had the same interests? Is this a need or a want for you in your relationships?
Absolutely a need. Because, like I said, it's a lifestyle, right? I think I didn't fully accept that until quite recently. I found myself dating outside the community a lot, and I don't know why I was doing it. I mean, I'm sure my therapist could tell me why, but yeah, I didn't really prioritize kink when it came to meeting someone. I guess it felt so normal and like natural to me. I didn't really predict that there would be much of a clash, you know? If I'm interested in this, they're interested in that. Vanilla people tend to, especially if you're open about it, they always tend to be curious and like, initially anyway, kink positive, and they see it as like a valuable thing and they're excited to learn, right? But I think that's a big decision to meet someone in a relational context and be the person who sort of like helps them enter kink. I think that's a relationship dynamic that you have to be prepared for because you won't have a peer or a partner in kink. You will have someone who needs to be cared for and needs to be led, right?
It's so interesting you say that as a dom because I know a lot of subs who say that. Looking for a dom, they're like, well, I don't want to teach them. To hear a dom say that, I feel like a lot of subs want to be taught. I'm not really going anywhere with this exactly, but I hear a lot of submissives saying like, I want to find a dom who knows what they're doing and I don't want to teach. And it's kind of sounds like you're saying the same thing about subs, but like you want to find someone who's an experienced sub.
Yeah, I think that probably just comes from the narrative that like subs, you know, don't have a very active role, like the sort of vanilla perception that subs are not taking a huge active role. It's the dom doing everything, right? But anyone who's been in the community for a while knows that it takes a ton of knowledge and experience and, you know, motivation to be a great sub, right? To be a great partner in any kind of scene, no matter which role you're slipping into. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, I don't want to teach all the time. I'm happy to teach and share what I know, but when you put that into a relational context, it can be more difficult, right? Because there's no guarantee that that person is really going to be interested in a lifestyle in the same way you are. So you're taking a chance that they might dip their toe in with you and go, that's not for me. What do we do now? Or in my case, I actually came across quite a few people who sort of fetishized kink. And they initially thought it was great and it was exciting that I was able to be open with my sexuality and explore these things. But at the end of the day, when you get right down to it, they bring a lot of their own shame and they think of it as sort of disgusting or unsavory.
It's interesting because I've never really heard of something being like kink being fetishized by someone to the point that they want to dabble it, but obviously it exists and I know it does. It's just an interesting way to put it.
I think as culture advances and the barrier between kink and mainstream life gets a little thinner, people are more open about it. People can be themselves, especially with social media. I think vanilla people are a lot more aware of kink without understanding it, right? And if you're aware of something, you just know what it looks like and what it seems like to you, but you don't really know what's going on. And so you see the flashy, exciting, sexy parts, and maybe you're not in touch with your sexuality and you really admire people who are, which is great, but doesn't really end well if you bring your own shame into that situation and then put it on them.
No, 100%. It does not. And it's why the open conversations are so important, but I still think we lack a lot of space to have those open conversations. The advice I always give people is get involved in your community because once you start to be around people who are just like you, and also kinky, it normalizes it for you. Back in your dating days where you were still dating vanilla, like were there any successful things that you tried that helped them to tap into their submission a little bit more? Any books you'd recommend to them or like research for them to do? Because I am very guilty of dating vanilla and thinking I can change someone. It has happened a lot in the last.
Isn't it?
It's so tempting. And especially because kink isn't my number one thing. It's my number three thing on the priority list, you know? And if the first two, sometimes a shiny object is like so appealing, I'll go for it. But so I'm curious, did you have anything that worked for you even a little bit?
I think it is a great way to connect with people because the best way to forge a new connection is to do something, to try something, to push your boundaries a little bit, to do something exciting. So I think kink is so accessible if you're with an experienced partner because it's right there. You know, they have the knowledge and the tools right there in their hands. But for a vanilla person, it can be so, so exciting. I'm sure that sounds a little condescending, but it can be very, very exciting for them because it's something they've never tried that, might totally rock their world. It's like going skydiving with someone and bonding over all the endorphins, except you can do it in your own home, right? So it is a fantastic tool for connection, whether your partner has experience or not, but I would say more so if they don't have experience, right?
I'm always curious of what's the best way to teach people to, because so many of my clients then it's teaching, they're already partnered. They're 10, 15, 20 years into a relationship. And then they bring me in to help teach. And I'm I wonder what has worked for other DOMs and or subs, so I often ask that question. There are certain books that I'll hand to couples and I'll be I think you both need to read these books. Nothing's the same as the lived experience.
Very true. I think in all areas of life, I'm a big proponent of active learning. So I would much rather take 3 times as long to help somebody learn to do something than just do it for them. Yeah. And I think giving them the space to experiment and try things and giving them the options, but not doing it for them is really, really important, right? Because I don't know what they like. They're the one who knows best what they like. Even if they're, not sure what their options are or not sure where to go next, I can help them with that, but I can't do the learning for them. I can't do the discovering for them, right? I can just sort of facilitate that and keep them safe while they're doing it. So I think it's more of a container than it is a actual lesson.
There are so many movies that do not paint kink in the most positive light and they break all the rules, but that's a movie. I mean, no one looks at the Fast and Furious for driving lessons. We watch Fast and Furious and we enjoy the entertainment of it. But there is a narrative that the sub should just be taken care of, as if there are just DOMs who were born this way and knew how to do it perfectly without having learned in the first place. And I'm very big about submissives being empowered to have boundaries and know what it's supposed to be like, so that if they do meet one of these people, they're not being taken on a bad journey. So it's both sides need to be empowered, and you do that through education.
Absolutely. And if you show up to a situation too, knowing what your boundaries are, but not what you actually enjoy, it's going to be really hard to connect with the other person because they don't know how to bring you pleasure. They have no idea, right? They're just sort of feeling around in the dark. I just don't think you're going to have a very good time.
The discovery of what you enjoy is difficult because I think more than one of us have been faced with the idea of, oh, in theory, this is really exciting. In actuality, this sucks. So there's an explorative journey you need to go on. Has that not been your experience ever?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I've also tried things that I did not think I would like, and I ended up liking them a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so what you fantasize about is really, I think a lot of vanilla people take it as a barometer of what they're going to enjoy. But sometimes it's just a thing you never do. You might do much kinkier things, but just not that one because it's fun to fantasize about, but it's not fun to do.
Yeah.
Or it's not practical to do. Maybe it's expensive or time consuming or destructive, right? I mean, there's a lot of kinks that you can try that take 10 minutes to figure out if you like, right? And so, yeah, a lot of times it might be amazing, but you're not going to find a place to store your vacuum bed and then pull it out and set it up and fire it up.
A girl can dream, but you're right. It's not likely. Although a home dungeon has always been the goal. I mean, you have a nice little setup behind you. I am not even handy enough to hang up command hooks. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is my content creation corner, so I figured it was a good place to hang everything.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I make all these things that are behind me, and I do giveaways on my page.
So do you ever sell them?
No, I don't sell them. No.
Too much work?
It's just not something I want to do as a job, right? And making artisanal wood products is really only profitable if you have a whole shop set up and things like that. And I just do it. I do it for fun. I've always done these things for fun. I'm very crafty. And so I never wanted to sell them. I give them away as gifts, or now I've decided to give them away on my page. I do a draw every month, and then whoever wins gets the toy that's being given away that month.
That's awesome. Do you create different competitions for them, or is it the same thing? You enter your email or enter your name or something in to get to win?
It's just whoever's subscribed on the OnlyFans, and there's always different ways to get more entries if you want more entries.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite implement you've made?
Oh goodness, a favorite implement I've made. That's a great question. It's tough. I've made so many different things. I think if we're talking about the most unique, the one that I've really enjoyed the story of the most, it would be this one right here. So I made the mistake. This was the first paddle I made. I made the mistake of making it out of sugar maple, which is a very dense wood, and it's absurdly heavy.
It looks extremely
too thick.
Okay,
yeah,
all right, we're aligned on that.
Way too thick. You can't buy paddles this size for a reason because they're so heavy. It's almost 2 pounds, 18 inches long. It's not for use on humans. Not very many anyway. But I had a great experience with a friend of mine at an event, and I actually named it after her because she's the only person who's been able to successfully use it. Panda 750.
Oh, okay.
Part of her FetLife tag. That's not her whole FetLife tag. And it weighs 750 grams.
Wow. So that is 2 pounds, 454 grams. Mm-hmm. Holy crap.
Yeah, so that one was a lot of fun because it was the first one I made. It was the first one I used. And that was when I realized that these are decorative. They're not for use on humans.
Yeah. Very cool though. I don't know. There's now part of me is like, the unhinged part of me is like, I want to try it now and see if I could take it. But as soon as you pulled it out, I saw how thick. And then when you said 18 inches, because it's hard to tell length, I'm like, no, too much.
It's also got a nice smooth surface. So it doesn't just thud, it also stings really badly.
Yes, I'm out with the stinging. Okay.
Yeah.
While you describe that, obviously then you enjoy impact play. I have to assume if you're making these things. Do you identify as any particular type of dom? Do you talk about your approach in any particular type of way? How would you categorize it?
Pleasure dom.
Pleasure dom. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that I like impact play, it's that other people like it.
Ah, okay.
I like to please other people.
But definitely dom and not just top.
Yes, it's very important that I'm in control.
Would you say that extends to every part of your life?
I think I've found a lot of like safety and comfort in being in control. And so that's where I ended up going. It was a combination of that. And when people saw me, especially in a kink setting initially, they were like, you seem like you should be in charge here because, you know, you're enormous and I'm not. And so it was sort of a role that I was nudged into over the years so many times that I just thought I might as well embrace it. And I do really enjoy it. I do really enjoy like leadership roles. So I've always been in charge at work. I've been a supervisor or a superintendent or running my own business. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like to be in charge? I guess some people, but yeah, it just always made more sense to me.
I'm always fascinated by the people who are the same in all parts of their life, you know, because there's a duality that I have as like, I have my own business. I'm also a switch, but then I definitely enjoy submission probably more than anything. I say like I'm an 80% sub, but I do like to be in control outside of the bedroom, I guess, or outside of a dynamic. Okay. I like to be in control. So I always ask people, I ask a lot of people that because I'm really curious. And it was something when I was a dom, like at a dungeon, that was one of the questions I asked. I always wanted to know what they did and what their life was like outside of whatever they came in and asked for, because I needed to picture both sides. I always wanted to know if they were open to sharing, of course. I wouldn't force them to answer.
Yeah, of course. Did you find that people were, if they wanted to be in control at work, they wanted also to be in control in their personal life? Because I'd say that's where it diverges for me, is I don't need to be in charge of my personal life or my relationships.
You know, it's interesting because at the end of the day, people were self-selecting in. It was a group of people who could afford to see a dominatrix in a New York City dungeon. And a lot of people were cookie cutter carbon copies of each other. And I've talked about this before. So many people say, I married the person I was supposed to marry, meaning whatever in the 80s was held up, or this like late 70s or 80s was held up as this is the trophy partner. Go marry them. So everyone's story was disappointingly similar when it came to what their lives were outside of it. They were married to, it wasn't even a control thing. Their wives were just stay-at-home wives. So their wives ran the home and they went out and worked. Do you know what I'm getting at? It wasn't even a story of control. It was just of finances.
Very true, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very traditional gender role situation. And then because they were coming to a dungeon, most of them were seeing doms and they were being submissive. And I don't know if they wanted to be in control at work, but they were the type of person who chose to move to New York City and build themselves up in a financial career in finance or any of the major hubs of industry where New York has been.
And I imagine if they're in those traditional gender roles, then they're going to be pushed into a leadership role in a lot of ways at home and probably at work. If they're out working, they're the only income for the home.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the older they get and their kids are older, they have a little bit more time and then they'll go see a dominatrix. Although the lunch hour was the busiest shift and I had a full-time job at the time, so I never really got in on that lunchtime crew.
Yeah,
disappointingly. Yeah, but thank you. That the way you said that was so succinct. Exactly that. I'm not big on labels except for to help people research more what they're interested in. Because it's such a big world, labels are like signposts of like, go down this path and see if this isn't of interest to you, and then you can go somewhere else. And that's why I ask about the type of dom and your approach to doming, because I think that other people learn from that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think labels are very useful up to a certain point, right?
I think as long as you're not using the label to define you, because no one fits a box perfectly, labels are definitely, I'm a fan of labels for the educational purpose of it. But when it comes to labeling myself, I struggle a lot. Even as a mix of things, it's tough.
In what sense? Which part of yourself are you labeling?
Oh, when it comes to the kinky side of myself. Well, I'm definitely submissive, but I'm a switch, and the percentage, it's not even a percentage thing. I swing pendulum. It's like I'm either fully dom or fully sub, and that has caused problems in my relationships before. So I find it difficult to call myself a switch when at times I am 100% one or 100% the other.
Do you think that, I mean, we all know in our everyday life that there's no onus on us to be the same person we were yesterday, today. But I think when it comes to things like kink, where people are forming relationships, based on how they're interacting and what they're really, really after sexually, what might be their only interest, it can be a little more difficult for them to accept when people are fluid and those labels change.
Oh, 100%. With my last long-term partner, it was basically things just ground to a halt if I was in one of my dominant phases because they were not submissive. And there was nothing, I never expected him to switch for me. That would not have been his natural state, but it did pose some problems, especially if it went for a long time. But to our conversation about control and being in control in your life versus kink versus in your relationship, I would be most dominant when I had changed a job or I didn't feel like I was on solid ground in other areas of my life. I would lean dominant to gain some of that control again.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense.
But when it comes to the relationship side of things, if I'm not feeling submissive, then I cannot submit. Those are the struggles.
Do you think there's a big expectation on people to stay the way they are? Because I noticed you said that it was your fluidity that caused a problem in the relationship versus like your partner's rigidity. Because I know a lot of people who there's no fluidity. They are what they are and they're not going to change. I actually just this morning in a conversation at work said about my partner, like, I've never met someone who's such a bottom. There is nothing other than bottom in them, which is fine. It really works for us. But I can see how that would be difficult in other relationships. But I don't think the onus is necessarily on your partner or on you to adapt to your partner, right? Because they could just as easily be adapting to you. It's
an interesting thing because I think we just move into a non-kinky type of play. Whereas if I want to dom, he was never going to let me peg him. I will say that. And that is a fair boundary to have. So, but we had a monogamish relationship because of things like that. Yeah, it was sort of like, for me, it was seeking out kink outside of the relationship. And for him, he just wanted to enjoy other things on his own, which it worked until it didn't as a relationship, not as in a monogamish thing. I don't know if you ski, but you ski at the lower person's level. You don't bring someone up to a black diamond if they're skiing bunny slopes, right? You go down to bunny slopes. I'm really big on not pulling people into an area they don't want to be in. So if he was not in the mood he didn't want to be submissive, and he was as giving as he could be. I am not saying he was rigid. I remember just having these months on end where we were not connecting in the same way, and we would get past it, but not connecting in the same way because our flow was interrupted, and that caused difficulty. Okay. Any last words on finding a kinky partner and any advice to people out there struggling? Because I think it's one of the most common questions I get. How do I meet a dom? How do I meet a sub?
I mean, you fish where the fish are. If you want to meet someone who's in the kink lifestyle, go to where the kink lifestyle lives, right? A lot of people are searching for these people and they're sort of jumping at shadows when somebody says that they're into this or into that. But if you're on Tinder or you're on Bumble, it's probably not going to work out because people who are really kinky don't go into spaces where that's not really welcome, right? And where they can't express it. The dating app I've always used is Field because you can express that, right? You can be much, much more open about it. So I would say if you don't see openly, obviously kinky people around you, then you're probably not going to find one because you might find one, but if they're not right for you, the next one isn't going to show up for months and months.
You're so right. And this speaks to sort of the different platforms available now. I would argue that 8 years ago, if you were on a dating app, you had a higher chance of meeting a dom on Bumble or Tinder. But now everyone's migrated to Field because Field finally exists. I also like BD app. I know I would talk about it because it matches you based on, the BDSM test? It matches you based on your results there. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I actually had them on the podcast early on in my podcasting day. Like the founders of it came on and I spoke to them about it, and I'm a huge fan of that. And I met one person through that who I had a short-term relationship with here. But my point is there was a time I think it was easier to meet those people on Tinder. A lot of them were in their community at the same time. But now, because we have Field, because we have BD app, and there's a ton of others. There's like Kink, Chirp. There are other kink-focused dating apps that exist, and that's where people are going to be, I think. I've never heard anyone say fish where the fish are in relation to this, but I'm like, oh, duh. That's the perfect answer.
You're totally right. 10 years ago, nobody knew where the fish were.
So you just sort of got lucky. I mean, that's where I met my ex, who I had a long-term relationship. We met on Tinder, and it just worked out. Different times. And I also wasn't saying that I was kinky. You just sort of figured it out on the first date. Or second date when we talk to each other.
That's true. You always have to sort of break the news to them that, there's more than 3 ways to have sex, and I know about some of them.
Do you get asked for advice a lot because of the type of content you make? And obviously you're viewed as quite knowledgeable because you are. Do you get a lot of people reaching out and asking like, hey, how do I meet someone like you?
Yes, definitely. I get asked for advice, for information. I'm happy to give out resources, but my focus is not to be an educator, and I don't want to include any of that in my page because I don't want people to think that the rest of it is educational content, because it's not. It's for fun, it's to be exciting and pleasurable, but it's not for education. And there are a ton of great kink educators out there, so I'm always happy to point people in their direction. But if I don't have a relationship with somebody, I'm not willing to really give them information, right? Because I don't know what they're going to do with that information, and it could be harmful to them, even though it doesn't seem like it to me.
Oh, so true. That's a learning curve I had to go through. I started Instagram and TikTok for my business. And then I started to realize, wait, I'm viewed as an educator. And then I stepped into that role more. And I started making content more as an educator, because it's sort of like you decided to be the entertainment side. And I'm like, well, no, if I'm introducing people to kink, I need to step into the education side of it. I love that you just know your brand, you know who you are, and you know what purpose you're serving when you're putting content out. I think that's really important. It's almost like a stay in your lane in the most respectful, noble way.
Yeah, I think it's really important that I stay in my lane because the two lanes have nothing to do with each other, education and entertainment.
Yes. Okay. And on that note, I think that is a wonderful, final note. You can find Beau Delacroix on Instagram at BEAU_DELACROIX and OnlyFans at the same name, Beau Delacroix, with an underscore between the two. Beau, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time. We really went over time, so thank you for hanging out with me.
Thanks. It was great talking to you. I haven't done one of these in a long time.
Well, I'm so glad you came on the Kink Consultant podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Email info@thekinkconsultant.com. Until next time, keep on kinking on.